I found a photograph under his mattress. The plastic frame was sticky with a dark resin that smelled like burnt sugar and copper. The photo itself was wrong aged, warped, its edges singed like it had barely survived a fire. Showed me at 6 years old, barefoot in my old backyard, clutching my stuffed fox. The image was taken from behind a hedge that no longer existed. I tasted bile rise in my throat. No one else had that toy. No one could have taken that photo. The floor groaned beneath me as I stood, boards cold and slick with condensation, despite the heater hissing in the hallway. I stumbled back, and the walls seemed closer than before swollen, breathing faintly, as if the house itself resented my presence. From the vent behind me came a whisper, sharp and rapid, like someone murmuring, an unfamiliar prayer through gritted teeth. That night, I dreamt of my childhood home, only it wasn't the same. The wallpaper peeled like skin. My reflection bled from the mirror. In the dream, I opened the attic and saw him, the stranger now renting my room, younger, dressed in funeral white robes streaked with soot. He whispered, "You broke the seal." Hand behind him, carved into the attic wood, I saw the glyph my grandmother warned me about, the one from our village in Baluchistan, used to trap Nazir, the spirits that remember. I jolted awake, breath ragged. For a moment, everything was quiet. The heater stopped. The lights held steady. Then came the soft scrape under my bed, Nate, and the sound of the photograph frame sliding slowly back into place. I hadn't touched it, and this time, it was face up, with a second child in the background. One I didn't recognize, yet somehow knew. Asterisk, the room I rented him was plain bare walls. A single bulb overhead, a dusty vent that wheezed at night. But since he moved in, it had changed. The corners seemed darker than before. The ceiling creaked in ways it never had, as if something paced above us on non-existent floorboards. The air had turned sour, thick with the scent of rusted iron and wet dirt. The old air was gone. I tried to clean, to burn incense like my mother used to during Muharram to ward off jinn. The smoke curled backward as if something exhaled through the walls. He never made noise. No music, no calls, no snoring. Sometimes, though, I'd hear a low humming under the floorboards, almost like a lullaby sung through clenched teeth. Once, I stood by his door and placed my palm on the wood. It was ice cold, pulsing. I whispered, his name Adam, but something on the other side whispered back. Not his voice, higher, thinner. I found a notebook in the kitchen drawer that hadn't been there before. The pages were warped with moisture. Inside were diagrams I couldn't read, scratched in ash and oil. One page depicted a child's face, black eyes, leaking worms. Beneath it, written in Urdu, seal him in silence, or he remembers the door. For a day, things calmed. The air warmed. The house felt still. I thought I'd imagined it all, until that evening, when the light bulb in his room exploded. I rushed to check on him, but the room was empty. Nothing but the bed. Something moved on the floor. My old stuffed fox, damp, smiling, its fur matted with black, clotted hair, not mine. And in the vent behind it, something breathed back. Asterisk. The power flickered again at 2:12 a.m. sharp, precise, like a countdown resetting. At first, I thought it was faulty wiring. But each night, the lights didn't just dim, they shivered like they were afraid. The hallway bulb buzzed with a high-pitched whine, vibrating like something was whispering into the filament. I stepped out once, barefoot, and the floor was freezing wet, almost slimy. Smelled like old meat sealed in plastic, rotting in silence. From somewhere deeper in the walls came the faint, rhythmic sound of fingernails dragging across wood. Passing his door, I heard soft chanting, not English, not Urdu, a croaking, breathless rhythm that made my gums ache and the bile in my throat burn like acid. When I knocked, it stopped instantly. Silence fell to sudden, like a blade. A moment later, the door cracked open. Adam looked at me, pupils blown wide, skin slick with sweat. "Were you talking?" I managed. He smiled too hard. "No one alive," he said. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. It was stress, lack of sleep. The smell faded. The lights held for 2 days. Then, on the third night, I found something tucked into my bedroom windowsill. A strip of red cloth wrapped around a small clay figure. It had no eyes, only a screaming mouth. My grandmother called them dastic jinda, ones who knock once and speak in dreams, 'cause she used to leave honey mixed with blood on the sill to appease them. But I hadn't done that in years. I tossed the figure out, convinced it was some sick prank. For a moment, I felt calm. I even slept until the dreams returned stronger, clearer. I was 6 again, trapped in the attic. And this time, someone was knocking from the inside. But the attic in that house was sealed shut, so I thought. I searched for Adam online. No records, no socials, no photos, not even metadata. His name disappeared into digital static, like it had never existed. My hands trembled as I scoured deeper through obscure forums, paranormal threads, local missing persons reports. Finally, one response buried in an abandoned thread about untraceable tenants. The reply was curt. He was with me, 2021. Left a smell, left something in the walls. Don't ask questions, just don't look at him. At night, attached was a grainy image. My throat tightened. Same coat, same dead stare. The file name was attic_return.jpg. Double quotes. The air around my desk grew cold. Not normal, cold, hollow. A creeping chill that crawled into my teeth. The drywall near the baseboard pulsed faintly, as if something beneath it breathed shallowly, leaned in closer. The surface was sticky. My fingers came back red. Its blood warm, fresh. It smelled of rust and rot, like the copper temps with split lips mixed with spoiled meat. I gagged, tasting bile. The stain vanished as I blinked. I backed away and nearly slipped on something on the floor, a piece of torn parchment, curled at, the edges written in blackened ink. It was a binding prayer, ancient and familiar. One my grandmother used to murmur while boiling milk during eclipses. May the sleeper forget his name. May the door remain sealed. She used to burn cloves and press ash onto our foreheads during blackouts, just in case the attic rats remembered. That night, I unplugged every device. I taped my door shut. I even smeared salt and turmeric across the threshold, as Amma had once done after a neighbor's child vanished mid-dream. Silence followed. But at 2:12 a.m., my phone turned on by itself. It's one new photo. Me, sleeping, and something crouched above me. Asterisk, asterisk. That night, I dreamt of my childhood home again. But it wasn't right. The air was too thick, humming with invisible flies. My stuffed fox lay on the floor, soaked in something black and viscous. The windows were nailed shut from the inside, and the wallpaper, once yellow now, oozed a thin line of crimson down its seams. In the corner crouched a man, his face a blur of static, as though my memory refused to resolve him. He whispered, "You opened it," over and over, his voice layered like a broken radio. When I jolted awake, the room was darker than it should have been. My lamp clicked when I turned it, but no light came. The air smelled sour, like old milk, mixed with rust. I sat up, heart pounding. My mouth was dry, tasting copper. I went to the bathroom, and the mirror showed me standing still, even after I moved. My reflection blinked After I did, came the sound of soft creak from the cook hallway, like bare feet dragging across wood. I opened the door. Adam stood outside, eyes wide, unmoving. "You cried in your sleep," he whispered, "just like before." "Before?" I asked. He smiled, slowly, said, "Please, not the attic, remember?" Something cracked inside me. I hadn't told anyone that. Not my mother. Not even myself. That phrase was buried in the back of my mind, sealed behind years of forgetting. Yet now it rang clear, like a bell. I staggered back, locking the door behind me. Silence followed, relief. But when I turned to sit, I noticed its chalky white handprints smudged across my ceiling, leading toward the vent. And just above the vent, scrawled in ash, "He never left. You did." Asterisk, asterisk. I went into the attic the next day. I don't know why. Maybe I thought if I saw it in daylight, it would seem smaller, less threatening. But the moment I opened the hatch, a breath of air escaped, warm and foul, like decay trapped in fire. The wooden ladder groaned as I climbed. Still, creaked under my weight, sounded sharp and weak, like ribs snapping. My fingers brushed the edge of the floor, above cold, slick. Dust clung to my skin like mold. The attic smelled like something dead had been forgotten there. Beneath the insulation, I found a rusted lockbox wrapped in cloth that had once been red, but had now turned brown. Inside were drawings, hundreds done in a child's hand. Each one of me, sleeping, crying, hiding, in corners. The pencil marks grew shakier the older the drawings got, until the last one showed me lying in bed with something tall beside me, its mouth too wide, its eyes blank. Beneath the stack was a cassette tape, labeled in smudged Urdu. "Don't play after midnight." I played it anyway. The static was thick. Then a voice, raspy, layered, muttering my full name over and over. Getting louder until it wasn't a whisper anymore, but a scream, followed by the sound of something wet crawling across wood. I shut it off. The attic seemed still again. For a moment, the light through the cracked boards softened. A breeze touched my neck. I thought maybe it was just old trauma. Childhood hallucination. Maybe he just reminded me of that time. Then I turned to Levon, saw footprints, not mine, smaller, bare, leading to the far corner where the wall pulsed like breath, and carved into it with nail-deep scratches. "You weren't supposed to forget me." Asterisk, asterisk. I confronted Adam the next night. I couldn't take it anymore though. Drawings, the voices, the thing in the attic that knew my name. I found him sitting perfectly still in the living room, the TV on static, casting pale light across his unmoving face. His eyes didn't blink. His lips were dry, bloodied from chewing. I asked, "What are you?" He looked up slowly and said, "I'm the thing you prayed wouldn't follow." His voice had changed. Not deeper, but older, like many voices stacked together. I backed away, bile rising in my throat. The air smelled like something burning under flesh, sweet and rotting, like hair caught in fire. "I've always been here," he said, standing now, "since the attic. Since you opened the door when you were 6, you'll remember me, don't you?" And I did. A glimpse came rushing back like broken glass, the attic door, a toy box I wasn't supposed to touch. A whisper behind me, not careful, lonely. I let it out. I thought I'd imagined that week everyone had. My mother said I had a fever, that I'd slept too long, but I remembered the voice now, the promise I made. The walls groaned. Blood began seeping from the ceiling cracks, slow and thick, crawling downward like fingers. The lights snapped off, and the house exhaled something cold enough to burn. I ran outside. The air felt normal, the wind soft, the stars visible. Nearly laughed. Maybe it was over. Maybe naming it aloud had broken it. Then my phone vibrated in my pocket. One new voicemail. My own voice, crying, and something behind it whispering, "Bring me another, or come back." The house groaned beneath my feet, walls creaking like ancient bones, shifting beneath a weight they couldn't bear. A sickly copper scent wrapped around me, thick and metallic, like blood spilled and left to rot in the sun. My tongue turned dry, tasting the bitter sting of bile rising from somewhere deep in my gut. The air was cold, so cold it felt like fingers trailing across my skin, leaving ice where warmth should be. I shivered despite the thick wool sweater clinging to me. I glanced at the walls. Faintly, they pulsed slow, rhythmic as if breathing beneath the peeling wallpaper. Then I saw it. Thin, dark streaks bleeding from cracks in the plaster, spreading downward like open wounds leaking fresh blood. My breath hitched. The floorboards beneath groaned ominously, a sound not of wood, but of something alive, something waiting in the corner. A stack of old papers fluttered in a sudden draft of forgotten letters and faded photographs from my grandmother's village in Baluchistan. The ancient symbols she once described as seals against nausea and restless spirits were scrawled in shaky ink across yellowed parchment. She had performed rituals with salt and fire to keep the evil bound, but those protections had failed here, in this house, in my home. For a moment, the house seemed too quiet, the oppressive weight lifting. I dared to hope. But then came the lull, whispering, rising to a chorus of voices, chanting in a tongue I didn't recognize. Invocations, calling the darkness back. The walls throbbed. The blood poured through the clammy silence. A voice breathed close to my ear. I cannot run. Leave alone. Asterisk. I tried to run. The doors all led me back to the same hallway, endless and twisting like a nightmare. The walls bled slow. Thick rivulets of dark red, tracing jagged lines down the faded wallpaper. The coppery scent of decay grew stronger with every step, curling in my nostrils like a warning I couldn't escape. The floor beneath me was slick, cold as ice, and with every footfall, the creaking grew louder like the house itself was alive, hungry, watching. My throat burned, dry and raw as I swallowed bile that tasted like old iron and burnt flesh. The whispering followed me soft at first, then louder, overlapping voices chanting curses in a language I recognized from my grandmother's stories. She had once told me how the Nazir's restless spirits of forgotten sins could be bound only by fire and salt. But here, the rituals had failed. The salt rings I'd drawn were cracked and broken. The candles extinguished before they could take hold. For a fleeting moment, the whispers died. The blood stopped flowing. I felt a strange calm, as if the house had forgotten me. I dared to hope. I almost laughed. Then the floorboards shattered. From the hole erupted a cold, black mist that wrapped around my legs like icy chains. The voices surged back, chanting louder, filling the room with a darkness that pressed against my skin and squeezed my breath away. A voice hissed in my ear when I knew far too well. You never left. You belong to me now. Asterisk, asterisk. A week after. Vanished. The landlord relisted my place. She moved in yesterday, young woman, laughing as she carried boxes up the creaking stairs. The house looked normal in the daylight. The sun warmed its peeling paint and dead vines, but at night, the tad shadows writhed like living things. The air inside still smelled of copper and decay, the faintest taste of bile lingering on every breath. The walls weep now, thin streams of red trickling from the corners where light dares not reach. She lit candles, sprinkled salt in circles on the floors, and hung an old talisman one my grandmother gave me years ago, broidered with ancient prayers meant to keep nausea at bay. The same prayers that failed me. The same salt that cracked and broke before the first night's end. At 2:12 a.m., the power flickered. A soft whisper drifted through the room's barely audible, unmistakable as a quiet breathing the scraping nails on wood. Faint sound of a child crying, pleading. I watched from the attic window, unseen, a shadow among shadows. The woman smiled, unaware she's no longer alone. She left the front door open just a crack just long enough